So hopefully you can see that now. So some reflective tools that I'm not going to send you into a breakout room now. I think we'll just stay together now for the last 10 minutes. But I think if you haven't already started thinking about the reflective model you'd like to use to structure your assignment, I think these few models that we go through now might trigger you to start thinking about that. If you go on to the Pebble Pad on Core Strand 4, there are some examples on there. And the critical incident activity we did about 20 minutes ago, you can actually log that on your PLP and use that reflective process if you want, if it's helpful to get you thinking in that reflective mode. So one reflective tool that can be used is a 4+1 tool. It's not a cycle as such, but it is a process. So if you start with the try bit, what is something that you've tried? What is something that you've tried implementing? Or what is something that you've tested out maybe in your settings, in your classrooms? As a result of testing that out, whether it's a strategy or resource, what have you learned as a consequence? So what was something that has, I suppose, impacted you? What is your takeaway lesson from that? What were some of the positive elements that came out of that experience? So what are some things either maybe positively impacted you, impacted your learner, your young person, impacted the wider setting? Because obviously in your assignment as well, you have to really consider the wider context as well. So things like collaboration, so potentially a collaborative element that was positive came out of it. But also, if we think of a balanced account, what were some of the challenges as well? Now, how you interpret that, I suppose, would be up to you. So maybe you had challenges as a practitioner, maybe your team had some challenges, or maybe the learner or young person had some challenges around it as well. And then the next step then, again, that reflective cycle would be what next? So all of these things tied together, what is the next step? So everything that you've learned from that incident or that practice, resource, strategy, what happens next? And then you'd almost then start again, dependent on what your next steps were here. So this is one reflective practice tool. And I'm just going to skip forward a little bit for us into more reflective theories. And again, potentially you would have used these before, potentially you would have seen these before or read about them maybe. So the first one is Brookfield's lenses. So these are about viewing an incident or something that you've implemented in practice through different lenses. So if you start here, your sense of self, how did you view the incident or the resource you implemented, that critical incident, I suppose? How did you view it? What were your opinions? What was your experience? What happened essentially? And then for us, we would think about it from our pupils or our young person's eyes. How did they view the incident and what was it like for them? You know, what was their experience? What were the positives for them? What were the challenges for them? What were some of the things that really came out of implementing that strategy or resource for them? Then, in terms of the wider context, you'd look at your colleagues. Now, that might look different depending on our settings. If we work as maybe if we've got more than one adult in the room, what was their viewpoint on it? What was their experience? What was their opinion on what happened? And then potentially, if you don't work as part of a wider team in your immediate setting, maybe you've shared that experience with, I don't know, other teachers, other practitioners in the setting, your line manager, your senior leaders. What was their experience and what is their opinion in relation to that experience? So I suppose what do they discuss with you as a result of that? What is the advice, the opinions, their previous experiences as well? And then the final lens would be to refer back to theoretical literature. So that independent academic journey. So whatever happened, whatever you're reflecting on, how does that compare to what's going on in the literature? So what are the pioneers or what are some of the key players in that field of literature talking about in relation to that? So you're really highlighting with this reflective model how theory informs practice and vice versa as well. And then again, from this point, the literature perspective, it would really then make you think and forward plan. So you've taken into account different people's opinions, you've really reflected on your own opinion, and then you've started that comparative journey with the literature then as well. And then hopefully at the end of, collecting all of those viewpoints and the literature, it will make you think of a forward plan Potentially, it might make you reevaluate. It might make you come up with something new to try out into your practice. And it might even lead you to then going back to the different parties involved to discuss, this is how we're going to move forward. This is what I've learned. And it can be something really minor, or it can be something a lot bigger, depending on your setting and depending on the incident as well. So that is one reflective model that you could use. Another one is Kolb's reflective cycle. This is probably one that we've experienced before. I know for our student teachers, we use this quite a lot as well. So I'm sure you would have seen it at some point on your teaching journey, but the ethos is the same. You try something out, you embed something, you then reflect on it, what actually happened. Again, you could think about it again as in terms of challenges or positives. What have we learned from this? So as a result of implementing a strategy or a resource for our learners as part of this inclusive journey, what have we actually learned? And that could be something really small that has a really big impact, or it could be more than one thing that we've learned as a result. And then how are we going to change what we did in order to learn from it? So again, this really encapsulates what it is like to be an inclusive practitioner, always wanting to move forward and always developing. So again, what has changed, and then you'd implement it as a result, and then you'd almost start again with that experience. So I think Kolb's reflective cycle is available on your Pebble Pad for you to have a little look at. And I know that I think Gibbs is on there as well. So Gibbs reflective cycle is another one that you could look at as well. And if I just stop sharing for a second, and if I just, I don't think it matters which reflective cycle that you use in particular. I think as a practitioner, you've got to be really comfortable and confident with the reflective cycle that you're using. So if you looked at Kolb and Brookfield's lenses there and thought, oh, I'm not really keen on Brookfield, I'd rather use Kolb, or I'd rather look at Gibbs, then that's absolutely fine. You've got to be comfortable with it, because ultimately you're the person who's going to be using that to really unpick your inclusive practice and document that inclusive journey. So if you're not quite sure which one you'd like to go for, there are many, many examples out there. You don't have to use the ones that we've just gone through, but maybe start with your Pebble Pad, have a little refresh on some of those reflective cycles and processes, and then have your own independent research as well around which ones align to your practice and which ones you feel a little bit more comfortable as well. But using that reflective model to really synthesize your assignment allows you as an inclusive practitioner to forward plan and keep that reflective journey going. So even after you've submitted your assignments in January, you're still going to be in that mindset of, testing out new things again, planning new things, and collaborating as well. So when you've decided on which reflective cycle or which reflective model you'd like to use, I'm sure you could, talk about it in your next optional session as well, and, talk about if it's an appropriate one to use, and maybe really think about how it's going to help you structure your response to that assignment so that you're really considering impact upon you, impact upon the learner, and the wider context as well. So I'll just stop there. Like I said, in that PowerPoint, there's quite a few slides that we're just not able to cover because we don't have the time. So if you can, as you're preparing for your assignment, but also as you're reflecting as an inclusive practitioner as well, dip back into some of those resources and, triangulate with the Pebble Pad, and any questions, feel free to go back to your home university as well during those optional sessions. Has anybody got any questions before I hand you over to my colleague Darren to wrap up for the day? No? That's absolutely fine. So what I'll do now, I will hand you over to Darren, who's going to conclude the day for us.
Lovely. Thank you, Christina. Right. Hope everybody's okay. Thank you all.